Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Company on Power Talk, thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And caught a little bit of a hot streak in the last couple of weeks, picking up some great interviews with some iconic musicians and people that are my elders and in some cases younger than me, trying to continue the lineage of music. And I got a chance today to speak to an absolutely iconic musician and statesman and producer. He was on the scene early on, part of the original Fame Wrecking Crew before the Swampers came in, and then wound up really putting on his own aesthetics, stuff that we'll get into today. Taking a lot of American folk and rock and pop acts that would come through Nashville and really put their own twist on it, make it a little bit more commercial, but at the same time also a little bit more swinging because it was, cats like Buffy St. Marie and New Riders of the Purple Sage and Joan Baez, and the list goes on. And that doesn't even include the fact that he was Elvis's first bass player. And just so much to talk about with a legend, Norbert Putnam. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, it's great to be here, Jake. How are you today?
I'm doing good, man. Really an honor to connect with you. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about, did you cross paths with guys like Milt Hinton and like the old jazz upright players in your early on in your life? Did you have any exposure to them?
No, I have to say I didn't get into New York until the mid-1970s. And I was a producer then, and I would go up there to do orchestral work because of all the great string players there, you know.
What I'm saying is like Milt, some of these old guard jazzers, like they grew up in Mississippi. I just wonder how early you were exposed to
Oh, I knew who Milt was,
yeah,
okay?
Yeah.
Because he was playing on all those records.
He was but he also was part of there was this contingent of people that would play gigs on the Mississippi steamboat, the riverboats. And I just wonder about your first real experience. You know, so many of the cats that I talked to, Alan Toussaint, rest in peace. I never talked to Earl Palmer, Sonny Rollins, John Coltrane. They all started on these R&B circuits before they started playing bebop. So their rhythm was very deep, and they were playing on the Chitlin circuit. And I was like, I really want to find out if Norbert ever played on some kind of Chitlin circuit growing up. I mean, before you ever really established yourself in the studios.
Well, I started to play the bass, the acoustic bass, when I was 15 years old. But I didn't intend to be a musician. My father had played the acoustic bass, and he played on Bill Street when he was in his late teens, early 20s, okay?
Wow.
And so when I was growing up, an acoustic bass was always in our house. And my dad would play it on the radio here in Muscle Shoals when I was about 10 years old, on Saturday mornings, okay? And that was a country music show. But I ended up going to school up here, just outside the city of Florence, just north, a little school called T.M. Rogers, which was a 12th grade school, okay, with only about 800 kids in it. And I met some kids up there that were starting to play this new Elvis Presley music. It was Elvis with Scotty and Bill, okay?
Mm-hmm. I got it, yep.
Right?
Yep.
And one of them remembered my father had an acoustic bass, and he said, "You have to be the bass player. No one else in school has one." And so my dad, rather reluctantly, showed me how to tune the bass, but he warned me to stay out of music. He had tried it, okay? And he didn't do well with it.
Sure.
And he said, "Kid, I'll just tell you one thing. You'll never make any money." Is what he said to me. Okay?
Well, he's not right and he's not wrong, you know. It's somewhere in the middle, you know.
But anyway, these kids were doing early Elvis, you know, "That's All Right, Mama," and that kind of stuff. This is even before Elvis has Heartbreak Hotel. Wow. And so the kid up here that I knew was Danny Cross, and he played really good guitar at the age of 15. He could play the Scotty Moore licks. And so I would come home, I had a little 45 RPM record player with a big hole in the middle, right? And so I'd put on my Scotty and Bill records and try to learn to go boom, chicka, boom, chicka, right? Like that's what Bill Black was doing, right? And I was able to sort of figure that out. And the fact there was only about 3 chords happening. And then I meet David Briggs when I'm 16 the next year. And he's a keyboard guy up here in Killeen, Alabama. And Jerry Carrigan, who played drums out here in North Florence. The first Muscle Shoals rhythm section were a group of guys from Florence, Alabama. And we're on the north side of the Tennessee River. The south side is Sheffield and Tuscumbia. But Jerry's father wanted us to start an R&B band so we could play the weekend gigs at the University of Alabama, Ole Miss, Auburn, that sort of thing. Right?
How old were you at this time?
16.
Wow, great.
So I talked my father into helping me finance a Fender bass.
Fender bass. You didn't take the upright over? Yeah, you couldn't really play upright on R&B gigs, yeah.
No, because listen to music. We drop Elvis, all right? And now we're doing Bobby Blue Black.
I love this.
2 Steps from the Blues, and we're doing Ernie K. Doe, mother-in-law, out of New Orleans.
What about like Hank Ballard and the Midnighters, anything like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, got
Great
it.
bass player. I learned so much from that bass player.
Yeah, dude.
Okay? Yeah. Loved Hank Ballard and the Midnighters. Of course, we're doing Ray Charles. We're doing Jerry Butler. And we didn't get, James Brown was king. Okay?
Absolutely.
So we go to play the fraternity parties on Friday and Saturday nights. And you know, it's 80% James Brown. Now this young guy, Ray Charles, is coming on. So we're doing What Did I Say and Hit the Road Jack, okay?
I love this.
And Bobby Blue Black, 2 Steps from the Blues, and Turn on Your Love Light. You know that tune?
Oh my God. Yeah, I love that tune. Yeah, yeah, it's so great.
So we're doing that stuff at the age of 16, and a young man here in Florence, Alabama, named Tom Stafford. Tom's dad was the pharmacist at the Corner Drug, and Tom was the manager of the Princess Theater here, movie theater. He starts a publishing company, and I didn't even know what a publishing company was, but he heard we were the best local band. And so he got Briggs and Carrigan and I, and he made us a deal to come and cut demos.
Oh, my God, this is ridiculous. You guys must have been burning the gigs every night, man. You must have been blowing up the town, man.
Well, here was the thing. We didn't know anything about playing original music. Every bass part I ever played on our gigs, I took off the record as best I could, okay?
Totally.
My ears weren't good enough to get all of it. But suddenly, old Tom Stafford, he's saying, right here, he was like Tucker in The Music Man. Right here in Music City, we're going to have sex. He was saying, right here in Florence, Alabama, we're going to write hit songs and have hit records. We thought he was delusional.
Sure.
Jake, do you have a copy of my book?
I need it. But I just
this story's in there. Okay, but anyway, anyway, so we go up there after school every day, up to the upstairs over the drugstore, and Tom Stafford would sign anybody who could make a rhyme. The songs are awful, the chord progressions are poor, but we were learning to invent original parts on an original song. Okay?
Right.
And we do this after school for about a year. Now we're turning 18. And the young bellhop from the Sheffield Hotel comes up the steps. Arthur Alexander. Arthur looked like a young Harry Belafonte.
Sure,
okay?
Sure.
Handsome guy. Guess what? He had good songs, and he could sing. And so we start doing demos with Arthur. And then the other guy we needed to complete the picture walks up the steps, and his name was Rick Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And Rick Hall was the entrepreneur we needed. He said, I will raise some money, build a real studio, and we will record Arthur. And I thought, well, great. And so it took old Rick Hall about 3 months to put it together, but he built a little mono studio. And we only had 4 microphones. and a 4-channel mixer. And he figured out a way to use the bathroom as an echo chamber. So we recorded 3 songs. It took us about 5 hours on each song, okay? Because Rick is learning to engineer. He's never engineered a record before.
I was going to say that's a long time for one song.
Well, yeah, but look, here's the deal. Rick had never blended. Oh, he's only got 4 microphones. There's 1 mic over the drums. That's it. There's 1 mic stuffed down in the upright piano. The guitar player and I had our amps side by side, and we pulled them into a V shape because we're sharing a dynamic mic between the electric guitar and the bass.
Mm-hmm.
And Rick always yelling through a window that you could hear through for me to turn it up or turn it down until we had a blend between the electric guitar and the bass on 1 mic. He had enough money to buy a U47 microphone. And Arthur's singing in the one side of it, and a guy standing on a Coca-Cola box playing rhythm guitars on the other side with it open and omni all the way around, okay?
This is unbelievable.
And so it took Rick 4 or 5 hours to blend these instruments with the voice and the acoustic guitar into a single mono track. And he had a radio station quality Verlant Concertone. It would record at 15 IPS, okay? And he had 2 of them, so he could overdub. So we'd lay the track down, right? And so we got the vocal, and we got the rhythm section, and so now he's going to put some backing vocals on. This he did a day or 2 later, okay? But he could play it back on the second mono machine, blend it back into the mixer with the floor out there with the girls singing, and then print a 2nd generation copy. And if you have a chance at some point to listen to Arthur Alexander sing "You Better Move On," it's some pretty darn good engineering for a guy who never did it before. Okay?
You know, I mean, you're making my day here, Norbert. I mean, part of me, I just want to get that was your first so Arthur Alexander was your first session at Fame, is that right?
Oh no! Oh, listen, Rick, he still hasn't constructed the studio you'll see when you come here. He rented warehouse space over in Muscle Shoals City. You know, we built these huge hydroelectric dams down here on the Tennessee River,
right?
In 1925, and 2 guys came running down here: Henry Ford and Thomas Edison. There was so much power coming off of these generators that they intended to put a Ford plant here and an electric plant here.
Wow.
And they laid out a little town they call Muscle Shoals over there next to the dam.
Wait, Edison came down there?
Yeah, so there's going to be a Ford plant here and an Edison plant here. And they laid out an area that was called Ford City, right next to all the power, right? And then 1929 hit. They had streets laid out and street lamps up. They closed everything down.
Mm-hmm.
Rick Hall found the dilapidated brick warehouse building over there that we did those first records in. Okay. As a matter of fact, we only recorded the 3 sides there before Rick got in his car, drove to Nashville, made a deal, got it on the Dot Records, and it made the top 20. It sold well over 500,000 singles.
That is insane. Wait, so the building that did you guys ever come up with a little name for that warehouse those early recordings, or it was just like
no, we never went back there.
It was just one. Yeah, wow.
Rick had just enough money to do the 1 record, okay, and so what I have to tell you, the amazing thing about the deal was the record was obviously the label was Dot Records. They had one big guy. His name was Pat Boone. He gave Elvis a run for the money for a minute, okay?
He did.
He did. And so it's climbing up the charts, and I drove Arthur to Nashville to put him on a Lockheed Electra to fly to Philadelphia to do the afternoon Dick Clark show. So on an afternoon, he came out scared to death, gripping a mic so tight, trying to sync with himself, singing "You Better Move On." But an amazing thing happened. Dot released the record over in England, and a young guy named Brian Epstein, who ran the record shop
Wow.
for his family, they had a department store in Liverpool or something. He handed it to a young kid named John Lennon.
My gosh.
And we didn't know it at the time, but Lennon and McCartney fell in love with Arthur. All right. As a matter of fact, when they get their record deal a year or so later, they did the B-side on one of their first albums, and the Rolling Stones did the A-side. So immediately Arthur Alexander is covered by two of the biggest acts in show business.
Oh my God! I mean, that is.
It's a great story, isn't it?
Well, you're blowing my mind. You know, and we have a game on this program called Name That Voice. Pay attention to this, but also pay attention to the content, and then we'll come back and break it down.
All right.
I never connected with Stax Records. I got a lot of friends with Booker T, Steve Cropper,
Donald Duck
Dunn.
Dunn, yeah.
Yeah, Duck Dunn. He and I played on a Neil Young tour together on a record.
Oh my God, I heard that, dude.
I never had a thing to do with Stax Records, although Fame, Rodney Hall, the studio manager today, Rick Hall's son, Rick Hall passed away a couple years ago, but he showed me a picture recently of me, his mother, Linda Hall, and his aunt in front of, we were walking around Fame, but it was like a concrete pad for a building to be put up. So I was there early. I call myself the second generation house band at Fame. Now, the first generation house band at Fame was David Briggs, Norbert Putnam, Jerry Carrigan, Peanut Montgomery, Junior Lowe, and on the first two hits out of that studio, Still Away by Jimmy Hughes and You Better Move On by Arthur Alexander, I played overdubbed organ. That's the first time I'd overdubbed an instrument.
Oh my, dude, you're Norbert Putnam. Whose voice is that?
Spooner Oldham.
One for one. A beautiful. I mean, this is what I love about not just like this country, but what I really believe is like ultimately what it means to be an American. I look at musicians as healers. They're as important as medical doctors. I know, and a lot of people don't understand that in today's sort of you can't quantify music, Norbert. And I'd love you to just talk generally to younger cats specifically about, you guys had no baffles. There was a lot of leakage. Clearly, you were dealing with not necessarily antiquated equipment, but not a lot. You didn't have all the technology. You had fire and heart and guts and good songs. And I kind of wanted you to talk a little bit about ultimately how you guys, Carrigan, Briggs, and yourself, really learned to create parts for songs that ultimately became hit records.
Well, it was antiquated the way we had to record. It was not state of the art.
Definitely not.
Stereo was in at that point. As a matter of fact, Arthur's record was released as a single, and it was just mono, both A and B sides. Well, when it takes off in America, Dot calls down and says, get back in there. We've got to have a complete album, but it's got to be stereo. Rick Hall didn't have any stereo machines. So they took Arthur to Nashville to RCA Studio B and made the album up there and re-recorded You Better Move On with young Henry Strzelecki from Birmingham and moved to Nashville. He played bass on the stereo version. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. As a matter of fact, I never record with Arthur Alexander again because the guy who helped Rick make the deal steals him from him. Okay. He had signed a contract. This guy was a disc jockey on a payola station in Nashville. And he kind of made the deal with Dot Records, but he when Rick signed the deal to get a certain amount of money quickly, I think, and it was a bad deal, and he steals Arthur after they do the stereo thing. Okay. But Rick made enough money to build the studio you will see if you come here. The famed studio, the one that Spooner's talking about.
I'm coming, baby. I'm coming down. What was the other major hit that early on that came out of there that Spooner mentioned? I forgot the name of the song.
Oh, well, okay. So Rick builds this new room, right?
Right.
And we can't get anybody to come down here. Okay. I mean, why would anybody? The only hotel we had was a Holiday Inn.
My God, this is great.
And the food was fried everything.
Fried everything. Fried alligator.
You can have anything you want as long as it's fried. Okay?
Yeah, I got it. I love it.
Oh, and it's a dry county.
Oh, even better.
There's no alcohol.
Yeah, no alcohol. You got to. What was the closest wet count? You got it driven down from like.
No. We had bootleggers. Okay.
Oh, I love this. My God.
You would see a house in the middle of a subdivision, but they'd screwed up the driveway. Instead of coming up in front of the house and going out in a U shape, it went around to the back of the house. Can you imagine that? So you drive around to the back of the house, and a guy raises the window in the kitchen and says, "What do you want?" And you say, "I'd like a pint of old something or another."
Oh, right? I love this. Yeah, quarter rye. Yeah, I love this.
And that's where we get our liquor.
This is brilliant. So it was. You didn't have a lot of ability to curry favor with. How are you going to get cats to come down there? Go ahead.
Well, here's what happened to us though. Rick had some good friends in Nashville. Chet Atkins, Norbert, and Bradley both liked him. Okay, and they did some of his early songs. But I think they hooked him up with a guy in Atlanta, Bill Lowry Music Company, Atlanta.
Sure.
He came up here, and Rick said, "If you'll come up here, the guys will play." The scale was $45 an hour. Well, they'll play 9 hours rather than the 3 you get in Nashville or any major city. Wow. So we become scam artists, okay?
Totally.
No. Like scum artists. That's what the big
scum
city
artists.
Yeah, because we're down here, we play 9 hours and we sign for a 3-hour session. Wow. The paperwork goes to Birmingham. They never send anybody up here to see if it's on the up and up. So Lowry gets a big deal. He brings up a group called the Tams. And we do What Kind of Fool You Think I Am? What Kind of Fool? One of those deals, right?
Totally.
Big, giant record. Matter of fact, can you play excerpts on your show?
Absolutely. You want me to cue something up?
Well, you can put it in later if you like, but it'd be cool to play the intro and the first part of What Kind of Fool Do You Think I Am?
You got it. I'll put that in there.
But that was a big record, and the Tams became a giant group. And Rick Hall said something about putting a flute part on it, and we couldn't find anybody. And a girl who played, she was a junior, no, she wasn't a junior, sophomore in the local high school, came over in her cheerleader costume and played the little flute part I wrote out. And you talk about a homemade record.
Wow.
Oh, by the way, that little girl later moves to L.A. and becomes one of the top classical flautists in the city. It was on many wonderful recordings. Ended up teaching at Duke University. So how's that?
Well, I mean, it's kind of was your dad impressed by this at all? I mean, I guess that was, because he's like, he was playing on Beale Street, by the way. Was he doing what kind of music was he playing on the upright?
Well, he was playing all kinds of music. Now, when I saw him play on the radio station down here,
right,
it was contemporary country music, I guess you'd call it. The guy playing the guitar was Kelso Hurston, who leaves here a few years later and becomes one of the top guitarists in Nashville. He's on the Owen Bradley, Brenda Lee stuff and the Chet Atkins produced records.
Wow.
And the funny thing was, after we get the hit with the Tams, Rick finds a local guy who works at the tile company making floor tiles, Jimmy Hughes, and we do a record called Steal Away. And Rick put it on his own label and really made some money. It became a hit in the South, okay? But I think it sold over 500,000 records. So that's good. So Rick's got money now. And Bill Lowry's sending us Tommy Rowe. Joe Sal.
Oh, I love this dude. He's giving his whole stable over to you guys.
Oh yeah, Ray Stevens comes up here, Jerry Reed, all these guys.
What was it, Freddie Weller? Was Fred Weller on that lead? I'm trying to think about that. Go ahead, continue.
God, he might have been, but if Lowry doesn't come,
right,
the whole thing would have folded up, and there would never have been a Muscle Shoals.
Okay, I just want to be clear. Lowry, because even with the Tams hit, you still weren't necessarily getting you weren't getting a turnstile of artists, but Lowry was sending you his stable.
Yeah, and with that comes a few others. Okay. And so by the third year, I was making enough money for that to be mine. I dropped out of college.
Absolutely.
Imagine how much.
Not an unheard of thing back then.
Yeah, and by the way,
you could make a living as a professional studio shark.
Yeah. And we're doing this kid Tommy Rowe from Atlanta, and he has a big hit in Europe on a song we did called "Everybody." Everybody. But anyways, big hit in Europe, and Tommy's over there. It was a top 10 record all over Europe. Tommy's over there touring, and he gets to Hamburg, and the promoter there said, "Now, Tommy, you don't have an opening act. We have a great little band here. Would you let them do 15 minutes?" And Tommy said, "Sure. What do they call?" He said, "It's a weird name. They're called the Beatles, but it's B-E-A-T," he said. And the Beatles come out and played 15 minutes.
15.
Now, Tommy,
1-5.
Yeah.
I love this. Yeah.
So Tommy would come up every year from Atlanta, and we'd make a Tommy Rowe record. All right. Well, about 3 months later, Tommy Rowe marches in to Fame Studios, and he said that Felton Jarvis, by the way, produced those records.
Right.
And Rick Hall was the engineer. Okay. And so Tommy comes and he says, "Felton, you got to sign this group that opened for me in Hamburg." He said, "I don't know what they are." He said, they do all covers. They do twist and shout. They didn't do any original songs. But I'm telling you, they have so much charisma. I could hardly follow them. The crowd went crazy over this Beatles group. And of course, we're about to make an album. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, which is when we'd start. And he said, "I got a demo here." And so Tommy hands Felton a small 5-inch reel. It's got one song by this kid, Paul, and he's playing a rhythm guitar. And on the chorus, 2 other voices come in. He said, "Now, this isn't really the way they sound, but it's one of their songs." And so Rick Hall threads up the tape, turns it on. It's Paul McCartney. And he's strumming his guitar. But guess what? The B string is flat. And we're all looking at each other. Oh, he can't tune his guitar. One demerit, right?
Yeah, I love it.
And then he starts to sing, and the song is a really trite song. Something like about holding a girl's hand or something, right?
Right.
And in the chorus, 2 other voices lean in. Of course, it's John and George, right?
Sure.
It was so out of tune, the 3 parts. Rick Hall just reached over and hit stop. And Felton said, "Well, Tommy, I don't know what you've been smoking. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. We have an album to do. Let's hit it." So we make a Tommy Rowe album, right? And I don't know, about 6 months went by, and I got a call from Tommy that group called the Beatles have a record deal. Not only that, they're coming over to America to test the waters. The record was in the top 10 in England, and they make a deal to do the Ed Sullivan Show on a Sunday night, and Tuesday night they're coming down to Washington to play the Washington Arena. They asked Tommy if we were known as the Muscle Shoals rhythm section. This is before Rick had a Fame rhythm section. If we would play behind the 6 opening acts. That the promoter demanded because he wasn't so sure their record would be a hit by the time they got here. And so we got to back up the Righteous Brothers. Oh, we loved it.
Are you kidding me? That is unreal, dude.
So the original Muscle Shoals rhythm section, which was Terry Thompson played guitar. Terry was this old guy. He was older. He was 23.
Terry Thompson. I don't even know that name.
Let me tell you, he's one of the greatest guitarists ever lived.
Ever. I have no doubt.
He was our Sergeant Pepper.
I love this, dude.
If there was something that Briggs and I couldn't figure out, a chord, he would say, play it. He'd say, oh, that's going to be it's going to be an F minor 7th with a 9th on
So
top.
he had huge ears.
He had perfect pitch. He could tell you what note that bird is singing out there. and so
So you got so Thompson, you, Briggs, and Carrigan. Go ahead.
We were rhythm section. Now Spooner's right. Rick would be bringing in people like Spooner to do overdubs, but usually the part didn't make the record. Okay.
Really? God, I'm loving this.
Well,
this is so
what he was trying to
insane.
do. No, Rick was trying to bring up some guys that could become players. Okay?
I get it totally.
And so they'd come in and do an overdub session and get a little scale. A guitar player from Decatur, Johnny Sandlin.
Oh my dude, rest in peace. What a legend, dude. That guy was doing the Capricorn stuff for a long time after.
Yeah, but this is the 16-year-old kid.
Yeah, no, totally. I get. No, I mean he was the Almond Joys hadn't even gotten off the ground yet. Yeah, I get.
Oh
it.
No.
Yeah.
And by the way, I saw them
cow,
play one night.
Sandlin. You saw the Almond Joys play with Paul Hornsby?
Oh no, this was. I don't think Paul Hornsby was there. Well, make a long story short here. We're still on Muscle Shoals.
No. We finish the Washington the gig where you backed up the Righteous Brothers?
Well, the Righteous Brothers was one of 6 acts. They only got to do 2 songs each. Tommy Rowe was there. He did 2 songs. Oh, get this.
Yeah.
There were the Chordettes from New York who had Mr. Sandman. Mr. Sandman,
my favorite. Yeah.
bring us a dream. Dum, 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 dum. It was all in 4 parts, right? And the audience is all 15-year-old kids, girls screaming. They go, what is a Chordette? They never heard of this music. Okay, they even booed the Righteous Brothers.
Oh my! I am loving this, dude.
But anyway, make a long story short.
Holy God!
And by the way, Rick Hall was a slave driver. He gave us that day off to get up there, play the gig, midnight flight back to Nashville. We had sessions the next day.
Dude, what? I mean, the slave driver.
Yeah, and so we do the rehearsal in the afternoon, run out to get dinner. While we're getting dinner, the Beatles did their rehearsal. We come back, we're going on in 20 minutes. And there's this beautifully group of engraved invitations in our dressing room from the British Embassy. Could you come to the British Embassy tonight at 11 o'clock to meet the Beatles? We have a 12 o'clock flight.
Oh my God. What did you do?
I didn't meet George Harrison. That was February
62?
1964.
64?
And in the mid-'70s, I'm now a record producer. I stopped playing the bass. Well, I have to tell you, we were so moved by the Beatles and the rock sound of them that Briggs and Carrigan and I decided we'll leave Rick Hall. And we'll go to the nearest music town, which is Nashville.
Sure.
Nashville had about 25 studios. And major acts are recording. Elvis is there, Roy Orbison is there. And then you've got Brenda Lee, and then you got the country music stuff. Chet Atkins is running RCA, and Owen Bradley's running Decca. Chet and Owen produced 24 albums a year.
Was Sun Studios up there too?
They came later.
Johnny Cash and those. Go ahead. I don't want to.
But anyway. So
it wasn't like you were. It was. This was the opposite of Muscle Shoals. I mean, it was like saturated with studios.
Oh yeah. See, Muscle Shoals still only had Rick Hall studio.
Right.
And let me tell you, there wasn't anybody standing in line to build a second one because this is still looking like.
No, I get it. It's no man's land, dude. Fried food and just hanging out.
Well, I have to tell you, Felton Jarvis moves to Nashville and takes over ABC Records Nashville.
Man,
right?
Gee.
And so he's coming down from Nashville and meeting Tommy Rose coming over from Atlanta, and they hated it here. The Holiday Inn and the fried everything food. You can't get a glass of wine. You know what I mean? And so we come in to do another Tommy Rowe album, and an arranger's there with all the parts written out. And he hands me the bass part. I can't read this. He said, you're kidding. You guys are making hit records and you can't read a part? And Briggs, who had piano lessons for a day or two,
Right.
he said, I can't read the piano part. Now, Carrigan had played snare drum in the marching band in high school. He could read syncopation, but he's got 7 staves of music here, okay?
That's right.
The hi-hat, the crash cymbals, the tom-toms, the snare. And he said, I don't think I could read this. And the arranger, a kid named Ray Stevens, said, get around the piano.
Oh, my God. Get around. He said, get around the piano?
And he said, Norbert, I'll play the bass line in the left hand. David, here's a right hand piano part. Kerrigan, I'll sing the drums. And here we go, okay?
Wow.
And so Ray would play the arrangement, and these are pretty simple songs. And we could pretty much do it pretty quickly, all right? But that night, we went to dinner with Ray Stevens. And he said, guys, I want to tell you, Ray Stevens could write like Mozart. He could write violins, violas, cellos, woodwinds as fast as his pencil could fly across score paper, okay? You know, he goes on to become the country comedian who acts like he's an idiot.
Absolutely. It's really revelatory to know that he's
a great genius. There isn't anything he couldn't do musically, okay? So he takes us to dinner and he said, look, if you guys ever want to be real musicians, you got to come to Nashville. He said, do you have any idea how much money you would make in a 9-hour session in Nashville? It would be 3 record dates instead of 1, okay? And he starts saying, and we said, well, do you think we'd be good enough? He said, listen, you guys play the new music right, the young music, and Nashville doesn't have a young rhythm section. If you get your reading together, I will help you. And Felton Jarvis said, and I'll give you my work at ABC. And so a few other people were coming down. Bob Beckham, who had Combine Music, would come down here, who later gets Kristofferson and all those people.
Right.
So we were sort of allured to Nashville after 1964. So 65, Briggs and Carrigan and I go to Nashville. And when we walk in up there, we've got work doing demo sessions for the big publishers, Acuff Rose, Combine Music, Warner's, all these people. That paid half scale. The last year I played down here, I made $10,000. The next year on half scale in Nashville, I made $50,000. And a few years later in 1970, I'm making $100,000 a year, loading up my station wagon.
Oh my!
Going to
there was no cartage company for Carrigan to get his drums. He was just loading them into the station wagon or whatever.
Yeah, we all had station wagons.
I need video. I want to ask you, this is so important because when I talk to, whether it's Chuck Rainey on the East Coast or Dean Parks, cats on the West Coast, when that young kids' music came in, the original rhythm, the original Wrecking Crew guys like Tommy Tedesco, they could play rock, but they hated it. And in a lot of cases, the arrangers didn't know how to arrange for that contemporary music. So my question is, there were plenty of studios there, and who were the old guard that maybe was there, but did they have the same sort of, did they frown upon the rock music to a degree? I mean, I love what Ray Stevens said. You guys put that good feel on that new music, but who were sort of your predecessors there?
But I have to tell you about the old guys in Nashville.
Yeah.
They were very hip to the new music.
They were.
Yeah, Grady Martin was a guitarist.
Yeah, I was looking that up. Grady Martin, yeah.
Matter of fact, Grady and I do a Henry Mancini album together in Nashville.
My favorite Mancini album was like the
country album.
It's
right?
so free. I saw that on the whole discography. I'm like, dude, Mancini, man, I freaking
when
love.
You hear Grady play the guitar solos on that record, they're written out, every one of them. Mm-hmm. I didn't know he could sight read like that.
Wow.
Now, and Henry said to me, Norbert, acoustic bass, play the paper, no ad-libbing. And Henry's playing piano, right? But Grady, later I get to know Grady, and one day I walk past his apartment, and I hear this screaming Clapton-esque guitar coming out. I go over and knock on the door. Norbert, get in here. Have you heard this group Cream?
Yeah.
Listen to this.
Love this, dude.
And he was in there killing. If he could hear it, he could play it. And he was 15 years my senior. Okay.
I love so Martin. Who were the other elders? This is so classic.
Floyd Kramer, the pianist.
Jeez,
Okay.
my God.
That's him on all the Brenda Lee stuff.
Sure.
Patsy Cline. And Floyd, Owen Bradley was a great pianist in the tradition of Count Basie Duke Ellington. So he taught Floyd a lot of Oscar Peterson-esque things to do on the piano pop-wise. Okay.
I love. Wait, this is for me. How could you explain Oscar Peterson aesthetics in pop music? Because Oscar his music is pretty complex.
Oh, it was complex, but there were certain little things he would do, little fills and things.
Little filigrees and stuff. Yeah.
But they'd be placed on 13th chords instead of triads and ninths.
I did.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, like in a C chord, at the last note's a C note, he would show Floyd how to go up and play a little lick in D7, 2 octaves up, which is what Oscar would do. Okay.
Exactly. That's right. So.
Do you play as well, Jason?
I play not professionally. I play a lot of conga drums, and I also play trap drums. So I've felt that magic of the 4-way chord. I just feel the rhythm. So I'm not a musician.
Hey, can we pause for 1 second?
Do it, man.
Yeah, we had 2 great pianists, Pig Robbins,
Hargis,
blind boy since he was 3 years old. Also, spectacular ears. One day I was doing a Chet Atkins album. They hired me to arrange this thing, and then they didn't give me any tunes. And we get to the session. The producer said, "We'll just do head stuff." And I said, "Well, what kind of music? Movie themes." Well, movie themes. Well, the first song was "The Age of Aquarius." Right? And Chet walks in, and he says, "I can't stay. I've got a golf game in an hour. You guys just lay down a backing track. I'll put the guitars on later." Well, the producer, Bob Ferguson, played a Broadway recording of Age of Aquarius, or it might have been from a film or something.
Right.
Now I got Jerry Reed and Wayne Moss on guitars, 2 of Nashville's finest.
Legends.
Pig Robbins is on piano, and it's Carrigan and myself. Well, we all grab a legal pad and start writing. Now, this was something Nashville could do that New York didn't do and LA didn't do. When I got up there, we were taught to grab a legal pad and sketch out in numbers rather than letters. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, octave, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, octave. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
And so a lot of times they play a demo and we wouldn't actually know what the key was, but I could tell it wasn't the 6 minor on the first beat, that it was a 1 chord. And then you just write it out, 1, 4, 5, 6 minor, 2 minor, 5, 3, 7, 9, this sort of thing you'd write out. Well, we got halfway through this Age of Aquarius, 2 bars came up. I don't know what the hell that was, but you just keep writing, And at the end I said, "Okay, did anybody get the 2 bars back there?" And Jerry Reed said, "I don't know what it was." Wayne Moss said, "I don't know." Pig Robbins said, "Okay, everybody." Pig goes, "Listen up, because it changes every beat. The chord changes, and Norbert, the bass line changes."
Wow.
First beat's going to be an F sharp bass with an A7 chord, and so he quickly gave us the 2 bars. Okay. And 2 minutes later, that band was killing Age of Aquarius.
I mean, what was going on in the New York and LA studios that was different than the way you approached that?
Okay. Well, you spoke earlier about about what was happening in New York and
Sure.
New Orleans. Okay, New York was turning out some great records. People like Burt Bacharach was up there writing charts, okay? And Mill Hinton's playing the bass chart.
Hal David, yeah, totally, absolutely.
Yeah, and those guys were reading 90% of everything they play in LA, New York is written out.
Dig.
Okay?
Yeah.
But when New York found out that these guys down in Nashville, I can take an artist in there and they got ears and they can write it. Like a kid would come in and playing guitar and singing. He gets his guitar, starts playing, whole band starts writing. And when he finishes, we'd say, is that the key you want to do it in? And they'd say, yeah. And I'd say, well, that's an E. Guys, that's going to be the key of E. So everybody writes an E above all their numbers. Drummer counts it off. The band plays it flawlessly. And they also play it in a style of the kid who's just been singing. Those Nashville guys could play 10 or 12 styles, okay, of music. And usually the vocal would be your clue as to the kind of bass player I'm going to be is based on his voice, you see. Right. And so Nashville kind of had a leg up on New York and LA.
That is so Carrigan, Stevens gives you the pep talk. And then like when did like the Vanguard, Ian and Sylvia, Baez, I mean, that stuff is iconic. I got to be honest, in prepping for this interview, I was just like blown away that those cats, because they were doing some of the work up in New York, but then ultimately when did the floodgates open with those folk artists? And then when you, in hindsight, what has stood the test of time? What made your rhythm section, the Nashville Cats, what made those albums unique compared to the rest of the discography of those cats?
Well, we go to Nashville together, Briggs and Carrigan.
Right.
And we start doing these demos, and later Harold Bradley, Owen's brother, great guitar player, sight read anything, played a lot of bass guitar. He would play octaves above me when I played acoustic bass.
Oh, I love this. Okay?
He said to me years later, he said, the reason they wanted you on all those demos, because all those demos came across Owen's desk and Chet's desk, and we could watch your progress. Because we didn't always play as a rhythm section.
Totally.
In the span of a day, I would play with 3 different drummers, 3 different keyboard guys, a dozen different guitar players, 4 or 5 backing groups. Okay.
Incredible. So they were looking at you as the young guns and seeing if you guys were growing as a unit.
Yeah, but they still, at the end of it, I would say David and Jerry and I played together on about 20% of our work.
I'm so glad so you have to fill me in. I mean, what was it, like Buttrey or Carl Himmel? Who were the drummers you were?
Well, Buttrey was an amazing rock pop drummer.
Dude. Okay. Oh my God.
He had that down better than Carrigan. Carrigan could play the soulful R&B stuff.
Carrigan had the most soulful, the sound, the way he tuned his drums too was incredible.
Oh, he got that down. He really could tune his drums.
So really, I mean,
what else he could do?
Yeah, go ahead.
We did 5 big band albums with Al Hurt on RCA.
I'm sorry. See, this is okay. I need, because some of those Al Hurt albums, they don't list the accompanists. So
they never.
You have to tell me which is your favorite. I have to, dude. I will go buy those today. I mean, that I never know. Part of my issue with Al Hurt is I just never know who the accompanists are. I cannot believe you made 5 big band albums with Al Hurt.
Well, these albums had about a 45-piece band on them. Live at the big RCA studio in Nashville.
Oh my! You had a 450. That's insane.
We did a Burt Kempfert album. Burt was a great.
Oh my God, legend! Yeah.
Well, we do a Burt Kempfert album, and it's got that kick. Carrigan had to kick all the brass stuff on his kick drum. He never missed it. He read that part flawlessly, kicked it every time. And when we did Mancini, Carrigan, well, we got our reading together when we got to Nashville.
That's right, because you took Stevens' stuff, his advice to heart, and you did start to woodshed on the reading part of it.
Oh yeah, because Ray Stevens was arranging probably 2 albums a week. Well, that would be 6 sessions.
Right.
Right. And so we're getting all that work, and we're getting Fred Foster brings me in to do all the Monument work.
Oh my God, so Monument! I love Monument. This is like a dream come true, man. Wait, Carrigan was swinging a big band in the studios of RCA.
He certainly was. Okay.
And you were playing upright or electric?
Well, I played electric with. I don't like the electric bass.
Dude, I am loving. Is there photos of this? I mean, I have to see this. You're playing.
I'm going to send you.
Yeah.
I'm going to send
Yeah,
you.
when
an
you
MP3.
no, I just to see you on Hurt loved the electric. I love that he loved the
Yeah.
electric bass in the
Oh, and
big
listen,
band
I'm
set.
playing some Milt Hinton stuff. I'm going way up high on the neck,
I love
and
it.
it would come out better on the Fender bass.
Sure, totally,
You get up high on the acoustic bass, it loses power.
it does.
And I'll send you a copy of Dankeschön. Well,
Oh,
it's got
please. Oh, that is.
modulation, it's got chords forever, and all I had, the bass part wasn't written out, but I knew Kempfert's work, So you'd have don't like that, and then you go, you do all this kind of stuff as you go into the rest of it, right? And so Bill Walker, the arranger, said, just play it jazzy when it gets to this part, and then you go back to the 2/4 thing, right? And I'll send that to you because it's great fun.
That is so. So Buttrey, Carrigan. Who was your other rhythm mate on these sessions?
Okay. The original Nashville guy was Buddy Harmon.
Buddy Harmon was
Harmon.
You're telling me he's the original.
He was on
lineage.
all the early.
Yeah.
He was on all the hits out of Nashville
Unbelievable.
through the 50s,
Unbelievable.
and the 60s. And let me tell you, he was a metronome.
Tops.
Dude. And so Owen Bradley. Now it's 1966. Let's say I've been in town for a year, and I got a call from Owen Bradley's secretary. Owen was wondering if you could play the Belmead Country Club with him Saturday night. Now, I knew he had a big band. She said, but it's just a trio. It's Owen's piano, swishy drummer, and your acoustic bass. I said, well, sweetheart, tell Owen Bradley. Now, I'm considering that this is Gershwin, Cole Porter. Yes. I said, I don't know any of that music. I said, I might know 1 in 10 songs.
Right.
Tell Owen that thanks, but no thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, I dig.
And she says, hold on a second. She went and she talked to her. Owen says, bring your acoustic bass and come on.
Wow.
And I said, is he crazy? So I go out to the Belmead Country Club, and I'm up there talking to the swishy drummer, who was a really good drummer. He wasn't one of the studio guys, but it was mostly stick and brush quiet things.
Sure.
Because it's going to be acoustic bass, acoustic piano. And I'm watching Owen Bradley come through the audience. It took him 10 minutes to get up on stage. He was a major star in Nashville, Tennessee. And there's Mrs. Henry Cannon and Emeralds and Pearls and Stopping. She worked on Saturday nights as Minnie Pearl. Her husband was one of the wealthiest guys in Nashville.
Oh my God.
Okay. But anyway, so Owen turns to me and says, let's do Dancing on the Ceiling. I'd never heard the song. So he said, just set up over here with my left hand and you can see where I'm going with the left hand. Well, let me tell you, the left hand's only there for a second when it's too hard up, And so we do this thing. And at the end of the night, I'm so embarrassed. I said, Owen, you don't have to pay me. I ruined you. He goes, kid, he goes, you found most of that.
That is such a. This is why I do my show. I mean, he's like, you're definitely getting paid.
He said, you're going to stop and bail me. We're going to have a corn dog and a beer. I want to talk to you. Now, Owen Bradley at this point in time is probably mid to late 40s, and I'm 24 years old.
Wow.
And so we stop, and he says, okay, kid. He goes, you got good ears, because that's complicated shit, and you found most of it. He goes, now I'm going to make you third base at Decca. He said, now my number one guy is Bobby Moore. Bobby Moore would have been great in New York or L.A.
Right.
Because he could play everything. And he was and Owen forced him to go to spend the summer at Juilliard learning to arco the bass.
Sure.
And get his reading.
Sure.
together.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
So
I didn't.
This is the way. And listen, Nashville's a small town too. It was nothing like New York or L.A. And so people like Chad and Owen had found a talented guy. They would nurture him. As a matter of fact, my arco work, which is you bow the note instead of pizzicato, you pluck the note. There was a guy in Belmead played first base with Houston Symphony Orchestra. And I ran into him at a cocktail party, and I said, "Would you come and teach me how to arco the bass?" He goes, "Oh, I heard of you. You're the new kid in town." He said, "I'll make you a deal." He says, "I just got a Fender bass to play these society gigs. I'll give you 30 minutes of arco. You show me how to hold the damn thing."
Oh, I love this. That's a great deal.
Well, he ended up getting a proper bow for me, teaching me how to handle the rosin. And because all I'd ever have to bow would be the intro, and the strings are like 25 feet away. So I have to come in a little late because these are symphonic people. They play the notes slightly late. And then it's pizzicato all the way through, and 2 or 3 notes at the end. Buzz, 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 buzz. I have to tell you, Nashville's a very cool place. We did a record with a band, a group called the Neon Philharmonic.
I was wondering about that album. Please break that down.
Okay, well, that's all.
It was like 69 or something.
Yeah, Tupper Saucy is studies jazz piano with Oscar Peterson.
Oh man.
Okay. And he was a great orchestrator arranger. He comes to Nashville, and after the Beatles had Sgt. Pepper, he was so moved by it, he wanted to do an orchestral rock record. Hires me to play bass. Carrigan's on there playing drums. Who was the guitar player?
I'll look it up.
It escapes me at the moment.
Yeah.
Oh, and the singer is Don Gant, who was the producer for Acuff Rose. Don Gant, though, had played violin in the Nashville Youth Symphony, and he could sight read those vocal parts, that operatic rock vocal parts that Tupper would write.
So we got Tupper, and then
Don Gant.
Don Gant, Dennis Good on Bone.
But the whole thing.
And Chip Young. Chip Young was on guitar.
Oh, was Chip on there?
Yeah.
Okay. Billy Sanford did some work there too, I think. But anyway, so the Neon Philharmonic's the 2 guys, and Don could sing that crap, you know. And I want to tell you, he said, "I didn't write. I'll give you a rhythm part. And you can see all the changes. Just play whatever the hell you want to play." I said, "Well, should I be concerned?" No, make it over the top. Make it over the top.
Just go for it, man. I love it.
And if you listen to just some of those things, there's a song about Dresden in there. That's, oh God.
I just saw it. It's "Are You Old Enough to Remember Dresden?"
Oh yeah, listen to that. Now, and we record this on a 4-track recorder at the demo room at Acuff Rose Demo Studio. Okay. And the engineer was Don Gant's brother. I've forgotten his name, but all the rhythm track was recorded on 2 tracks. Okay. No, I've got that wrong. The entire rhythm section's on 1 track. Don Gant's on the 2nd track. And a week later, he brings in a string section. That goes on the 3rd track. And the next night, the brass comes in. That goes on the 4th track. And they mix it. Listen to it. It sounds great.
It's a record that, I really want to track. There's that record, and then this other, first of all, the name of that record. Do you remember the name of that record? The Neon Philharmonic record? It was called The Moth Confesses.
I think that's the first album. We made 2.
Oh, definitely the first album. No, this other one, Pearls Before Swine.
Oh no, that wasn't. Oh God, Pearls Before Swine.
I'm just saying, like when I was looking at it, there's Eric Anderson, Linda Ronstadt, Elvis.
Well, let me talk about
Go ahead,
Eric,
please.
Okay?
Yeah.
Well, here's what happens to me. So I get up to Nashville. Right away, I'm doing some R&B stuff. We do Polk Salad Annie with Tony Joe White.
Right.
Big record, okay. You know the record was #1 in France for a year.
No way.
I went over there later on when I started producing. I was doing A French Girl. Jacques Fernandez ran CBS Paris. I said, "Why was it #1 for a year?" Well, Norbert, they just couldn't understand what he was saying.
They had to keep listening to it. Oh my God, this is great.
So I started out in Nashville. I'm doing the hip stuff. I'm doing J.J. Cale, It's my bass on After Midnight.
Oh, the hip. Are you kid? That's the hippest stuff, man.
Yeah, now I'm playing busy shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I found out if I wanted to make any money, I better get busy.
Well, that's true. But I mean, you knew after Stevens' pep talk. I mean, there was no other young rhythm section. You guys were the youngest kids on the block.
Yeah, but let me tell you something
Go
else.
ahead.
Okay. So we come in, and by the second or third year, we're making more money than we ever dreamed we would make. And we're not playing together except maybe one of the sessions a day. And it might be me and Carrigan with Pig Robbins on piano, or it might be me and Briggs with Kenny Buttrey on drums.
Right? I mean, this is, yeah. It's just
And that's the way it worked.
Unbelievable.
Here's the way it worked.
Yeah.
All the producers had a list. Chet Atkins had 5 bass players listed in the order of his preference, 1 through 5. Well, I might have been number 3 or 4 on Chet's list, but Carrigan was number 1 for drums. All right? And then Owen Bradley had the same sort of thing. 5 bass players, 5 drummers, a dozen guitar players or more. And then we didn't have that many. We had about 5 vocal groups, but we had the Anita Kerr singers. Wow. Anita Kerr had perfect pitch. One of the greatest groups in the world was the Anita Kerr singers. And then we had the Jordanaires. As a matter of fact, one of the guys in the Jordanaires came up with a number system for everyone to use in Nashville because they had used it in some kind of gospel music. Okay? Well, that became our secret weapon because people could come in. Eric Anderson came in, got his guitar out, played the song down, and by the time he finished, we were ready to play it back to him because we'd written it out, you see. So I'm doing J.J. Kell, Tony Joe White, and Matt Gaden writes a song, Everlasting Love, that he does with a local guy. Became a big R&B hit. Everlasting Love has been a hit every decade for the last 5 decades.
Right.
You two did it, okay. All right. And so I'm hanging out with those guys, and Nashville had an R&B scene, so I'm doing that sort of stuff. And then the pop stuff starts coming in, and I can play acoustic bass with Henry, and I can do Fender with Al Hurt, and so we were all in a pretty good place. And so we go up there in 65. By 1970, my back hurts because I'm playing half acoustic and half Fender, and I got to lug that B15 amp in and out.
Totally, man. Jeez, and it's 2 totally different ways of playing the bass too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And so Briggs and I, we were great friends from the age of 15. And every Saturday night, he and I would meet for dinner with our wives, and they would talk while he and I talked. And I'm saying, David, I never knew I was going to play 600 record dates. I played 600 this year. My back hurts. I'm going to die. I can't do this any longer.
Right.
And Briggs said, you know what we should do? He said, this country records, this country music shit. He said, you ever listen to those lyrics? Anybody can write that shit. He said, let's quit. Let's build a demo studio. We started publishing it. We'll write 2 or 3 of those a year, and we'll live in the mountains, and we'll go down and get the money.
Briggs is a genius.
He is a genius.
Briggs.
Now,
yeah, so that's so quadraphonic, right? Is that when?
Well, so we buy a little old house, and it's just going to be a demo room. And but one of the guys you asked about, Ian and Sylvia are coming down.
Sure.
Elliot Mazer, New York producer,
Mazer,
brings it to Nashville. And he later on. Well, anyway. So he brought a lot of acts that we did. And we went up to Thunder Sound in Toronto and did some stuff too with him. But
really?
Yeah. And so I was traveling around about 1970. So we built this little room, and Elliot Mazer comes over and looks at it. It's in a little old house. And he said, you're putting a 4-track, put in a 16-track. I bring all my acts here. Mm-hmm. And we said, it's just a little old house. We had the living room, the dining room, and the kitchen. We enclosed the front porch for the control room. He goes, this is really cool. There's a fireplace in the front. Well, that meant we were going to have to spend some money. He said, well, I'll be one of your partners. So he came in as a partner, and Briggs and I borrowed $125,000 and equipped the studio.
Wow.
Which you could do in those days. We had 2 EMT plates, stereo plates for all the echo. And we managed to find a Steinway B that a college professor had that was in perfect shape. It was 20 years old. And you could buy a Norman microphone in those days for $250, you know.
Right.
We got a Quad 8 console, which is very Neve-like.
It was like a Neve, similar to Neve, yeah.
Yeah, the mic pre is. And so that was our first console, a 16-track MM1000 Ampex. All right. And then another miracle happened. A year or two before, I was in Columbia Studios coming at 2 o'clock, setting up for a 2 o'clock session. You get there at 1:45, right? And this homeless looking man came over to me. I say that because he's wearing faded old black jeans, a black t-shirt, disheveled hair, and boots that were unkept. And he said, "You're Norbert Putnam, aren't you?" And I said, "I am. My name's Kris. Yeah. I'm going to be helping Charlie. You want me to empty that ashtray?" I said, "Kris, I don't smoke." And well, anyway, this guy Kris is making $35 a week, and he's running around. And one day he comes over to me after about a month. "I don't suppose you could have a beer with me at 5 o'clock on your break, could you?" I knew what he wanted. I said, "Absolutely. Meet me at Ireland's restaurant, 5:15. I have to leave at 5:45, and we'll grab some food." So I stopped by the bank and I got some money, because I know he makes $35 a week, and he's living in the attic of an old house nearby. So I got $100 or something, maybe $50. I'm going to give him that. And so we sat at the bar, and I said, "So how's things going?" He said, "Well, I might as well tell you the truth. I came up here to be a songwriter." Oh, God. When you say that, a veil drops in front of my eyes. So I went in my standard speech. I said, "Well, Kris," I said, "I have to tell you today, you and 3,000 other people are trying to be songwriters." And I started to tell him that I don't think you got a chance in hell, when he says, "Well, I've been talking to Scotty Moore." Scotty's the guy that helped Elvis, you know.
Absolutely.
And he's going to give me 3 hours of studio time on a Saturday morning to get some of my songs demoed. And I was wondering if you and Carrigan and Briggs and maybe Chip Young could just come for 2 hours. And I can't pay you anything on a Saturday morning. Well, I bought him some steak and biscuits, and he didn't ask me for any money. What I didn't know, and he didn't tell me, was once a month he would skip out to the airport and fly down to New Orleans and fly jet helicopters to the oil rigs and come back to work as a bum on Monday.
Interesting. So he was getting some dough doing that.
Yes, the son of a bitch. Okay, but anyway, we finally. Now I have to tell you, we have 2 days off, right?
Right.
And musicians will not work Saturdays in Nashville, no matter double scale. When we did Linda Ronstadt, we're doing Linda Ronstadt. We cut this album. Half of it we do it in LA, half of it in Nashville. And I was the music director for it. And the songs are awful. And we're real embarrassed by the record. It's called Silk Purse or something. And I get a call from Elliot Mazer. And he says, "Linda's found one more song, Norbert. It's a great song. We got to do it this Saturday." I said, "Everybody's going to the lake." "Well, can't you get?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, we got to do it Saturday morning, 10 o'clock, Willen Studios." Buttrey says, "I'm not coming in." Briggs has gone to Alabama. Everybody's gone. And I found Pete Wade, an amazingly good guitarist.
Sure.
And his house was near my house, except his house was just in back of Andrew Jackson's Hermitage, okay?
Wow.
And his house was 1820, and he would cut the grass on Saturday mornings. I said, "Pete, could you come in for 30 minutes? It's a little ballad, simple chords. I'll have you out of there in an hour." And he said, "And that's all there is to it?" I said, "I promise you." So I called Elliot. "All I've got, Pete Wade's guitar, my bass, okay? And we'll do it with Linda's voice." And that was a long, long time. You know that record?
I do.
Okay, so we go in. I'm sitting there side by side. But one other thing I wanted to say,
Go ahead.
something was mentioned early on about sound and leakage and all that sort of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, before headphones. Matter of fact, when we did Linda, we were not wearing phones. Okay.
Absolutely. That was a whole other. Yeah, I love this. No headphones. No. Yeah, you were all in the same room.
Yeah, and when we did Henry Mancini and Al Hurt, the 50-piece band stuff, Carrigan played loud enough for the drums to hear him. None of the drummers ever slammed the drums.
There were no in-ear monitors. It was just all.
Hell, no.
This is, and the music is burning. It's burning music because
everybody played the same level. Okay.
Love it.
We're doing Bobby Goldsboro. We're recording Honey and Little Green Apples one morning. Okay.
Yes.
And I'm playing acoustic bass. And I'm playing sort of Baccarat kind of sound,
Right.
And I can hear everyone in the room. And I can hear, and Bobby's 15 feet from me. And the vocal group's 18 feet from me. And the live strings are over here. The drummers could play so quietly that we didn't have that kind of thing. When we get headphones, and now they can't hear well enough, they start slamming it. And it was a real problem getting great sounds. The guitar players, there was never a guitar player louder than any other guitar player because the guy and the engineer was bringing up the guitar parts. The mic's right there on the speaker calling, So anyway, we went from having great feeling in studios to having headphones on and the problem was you didn't have a second engineer to work the phones,
What was just as a bumpkin, what was the rationale if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Why? If everybody was playing with beautiful dynamics, everybody could hear each other, what was the rationale for headphones? Because it really screwed things up royally.
Well, what happened was a lot of the bands that came in were the young rock bands.
Yeah, they were rockers, yeah.
And they wanted to crank the amps, too.
Right.
And there were guys over in England like Glenn Johns, right?
Oh, legend.
He figured out that what you could do, if the drummer's going to be slamming it, you put a guitar amp with a 4-foot-high baffle between the drums and the guitar amp, and you have the guitar amp come up to the level the drums are playing at, and the bass amp comes up to the level the drums are playing. When everything's the same level.
Thank you so much for that.
You have isolation.
Because I talked to some drummers that worked with him, and what you just dropped, that knowledge is totally mind-blowing. And the way he used to mic the drums, too, it was just one left and one right overhead and maybe one on the kick. It was just so there was a combination of things that created, I guess, equalization or some kind of but outside of Glenn Johns, a lot of producers. How did you deal with that when it must have been infuriating when you couldn't really get levels down because of headphones and everything got louder and
well it was the 80s before we had 14 mics on the drum kit.
That to me is the most the best sounding. What can you just talk about, like the miking that Carrigan and Buttrey had, especially like late 60s, early 70s? Like what was your sort of doctrine for quadraphonic in terms of miking the drum kit? I think that to me it's one of the most important, and today every piece of the drum kit is mic'd. There's no leak. There's no space. That's a big problem for me.
Well, the problem in those days was phase, which is time.
Yes.
Right? So you got a mic on the snare drum. He hits the snare drum. Milliseconds later, that sound goes into the tom mics.
Right.
And milliseconds later than that in the overheads. Right? And that produces a thin sound on the snare drum. Okay?
Interesting.
And what Glenn Johns knew, Glenn would put the the mic over probably around where the top of the drummer's head was. So maybe that's only 2.5 feet up from the snare. And then he would take a mic cable and measure off that same length over to the floor tom. Okay? And so the floor tom and the overhead mic would be the same distance from the snare. So the sound didn't get thin.
See,
Okay.
Oh, I love it.
And if they hit the toms real hard, they would explode too.
When did
By
you
the
get
way,
hip to that? I mean, when did you first cross paths? Because ultimately, ultimately you became that kind of producer. You know.
well, by the time I started to produce, I was the luckiest guy in the world. Okay.
Absolutely.
Do you know that
Luck is the residue of design. That's what Branch Rickey said. So.
Yeah. Well, most records were made by staff producers. Bob Johnson was working at Columbia in New York when he gets Bob Dylan. Okay. He got no points. He got a nice salary. Owen Bradley produced 24 albums a year in Nashville for Decca as a staff producer. He got no royalties. Chet Atkins produced 24 albums a year for RCA across the street. He got no royalties. But Chet would make 2 or 3 guitar albums a year. That's where he made his money.
Absolutely.
He was the biggest selling guitarist in the world, right? Well, here I come along. Anyway, Dave and I are building Quad, right?
Right.
And we're going to be great writers.
Right.
Well, there was a kid out there working on the control room who kept telling me that he wanted to play songs for David and I, that he was a good writer, and would we listen? And we kept saying, well, let's get the control room finished, and we'd be glad to listen to your songs. So we got the control room finished, and David and I were upstairs in one office we shared. And we had a girl at the desk, and she said, now Troy's here, and you promised him you'd listen to some of his songs. Oh, God. I said, David, listen, I love this guy. No matter how bad he is, let's let him down easy. David said, oh, I like him too. This guy, Troy Seals, comes up. And he opens the door and he comes in. He takes his guitar out of the case, hands us written copied lyric sheets. That's very professional. So we can follow the lyric.
Sure.
Right? But you know what else he did? We watched him tune his guitar, tuned it flawlessly. My God, he's a musician. Amateurs can't do that. Okay.
Right.
And then he started to sing, had this great voice. And I'm reading these lyrics and I'm looking at David, he's looking at me. Do another one, we said. He does another one. Do one more. He gives us a third one. Troy, wait downstairs. I have to talk to David.
Wow, things have changed.
And so Troy goes down the steps. I said, Briggs, I said, you and I haven't written a fucking hit song. This guy's got loads of them, and he can sing them. He can sell the songs. David said, let's put him in charge of the publishing. We shook hands. So Troy Seals comes back up, and we said, how would you like to run Daynor Music? That's for David and Norbert.
That is so ridiculous. You were going to let him down easy, and then he's getting the bird's eye view, man.
Well, and then he goes on. He's in the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame.
Hold on, before we go any farther, I really was interested in this hobo story, Charlie. What happened? We never finished that story. He was going to New Orleans. He asked for that Saturday time with you guys, and you're trying to rally the troops.
Yeah. Well, I finally get everybody to go over there on a Saturday morning, and Carrigan said, "You tell this son of a bitch, I'm out of here." Okay.
Wait, what did he say? He's like, "I'm not." Did he come or no?
Yeah, and so did Chip Young, but they're not going to stay, right?
Right.
And so Kris shows up about 9:45, and he opens his guitar case and he takes out a bottle of Southern Comfort.
Smart.
And they said, "Hey, Put, you want to have a swig with me?" I said, "It's 10 in the morning." And he turned it up and he went gook 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 gook. And I thought he's had a drink before. He took down about half of it. And then he got his guitar out and he said, you sons of bitches, he goes, you play for all these great singers. I can't sing worth a damn. He said, but I think I got some good songs. And so he starts singing this song. Now we grab our little legal pads and we start writing. It's just simple country changes. But he's beating his guitar so loud I can't hear anything he's saying. So he beats the guitar all the way through. And Scotty says, get on mic and let's run it down. Well, we still don't have any headphones on. And so we lay a track down, and Scotty said, come in and listen to it. And it starts, and that voice comes on. And David leans over and goes, this son of a bitch is worse than Dylan.
Yeah, right.
But by the time it got to the chorus, we're looking at each other. Hey, pretty damn good lyric. Wow. Could it be?
Could it be?
Well, I think we did 5 of them in 2 hours, mostly one take, you know.
Sure.
And Kris went down the street and made a publishing deal. And so he wasn't the cleanup man anymore. And then he got a manager, and he was coming into Nashville all the time. Oh, and I played bass on his first record for Monument, of course. He hired all of us. And now he's making movies. And he called me one day. He's going out to do a Sam Peckinpah movie. I forgot what it was. Billy the Kid and something or other.
Sure.
And Dylan was in that too, I think. And he said, hey, you working that Joan Baez record next week? Oh, yeah, I play every she comes down every year. Maynard Solomon produces for Vanguard Records.
That's right, Maynard. Thank you. Couldn't remember his name.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I usually play second bass. Kris said, what do you mean second bass? Junior Husky, who played the Opry.
Yes.
He was the greatest country bassist I ever heard.
I cannot believe that is unreal.
And when he played country music, it swung.
Hard. That is so freaking cool, man.
Because it's a place that those of us who grew up playing rock and roll and R&B. Owen Bradley gave me a whole bunch of records that Junior played on, and a whole stack that Bobby Moore played on. He said, this is my number 1, number 2 guy. And I do an album in 3 3-hour sessions, but invariably I can't get one of them for all 3, and you're going to get called for one of them. But listen to this, and when you come, you be either Junior or Bobby. I don't want any of that Muscle Shoals shit on my record.
Play it straight, play it right. Yeah, I dig.
And I did, and I learned to play the country stuff listening to Bobby Moore and Junior Husky.
Just tell me. So, I'm sorry. What was Kris's full name? Who is this? He wound up becoming a pretty successful musician.
Kris Kristofferson.
Oh my God! You have to be. Are you kidding me, dude? I was listening to Kristofferson nonstop the last 2 days. The first time you laid eyes on him, he looked like a bum. He was basically homeless.
Yeah, and I think he sort of purposely did that.
Yeah.
You know, he's a smart guy. He's a Rhodes Scholar. That?
I did not know that, Mike.
Oh, he's an expert on English literature. So prose was easy for Kris Kristofferson.
Dude, Norman Putnam. I mean, I want to run through this group of cats, and then you can riff on it, because this record now will take on a completely new meaning for me. Mazer again. Mazer, Charlie McCoy, Wayne Moss, Weldon Myrick, Norbert Putnam, Buddy Spiker, Bobby Thompson, Buttrey, and Briggs, area code 615.
Yes.
Okay, so basically you got, like, quadraphonic took off, but I just want to know, like, eventually they were like you guys are the studio cats.
I don't think we had quad when we did. We were getting ready to do quad.
Okay, so but I mean, you were like the wrecking crew, like. Did you have a name, by the way? Because the wrecking crew was in L.A.
Well, let me tell you.
Yeah.
No, but these were the guys that Mazer wanted to use when he came down. Okay.
Dig.
I did. Manhattan Transfer.
Big, dude. I'm going to get that album right away. I had 71.
Oh, was that 71? But before, when Ian and Sylvia came down, that's in mid 60s.
Oh yeah, no, we're looking here, looking at the discography here for Norbert Putnam, the Monkees in '66. We can't gloss over that. But also
listen to the band.
Ian and Sylvia were the first main Ferguson Vanguard group in '68, and then area code 615 cut your first record in '69.
Yeah. And that was out at Wayne Moss's garage.
Oh my God! Now, what was Mazer wanted to bring in the cats, but how much creative control did you have? That music is burning. I mean, it's the most burning, non-genre, it's genreless music.
Well, well, here was the deal. We were having lunch one day in Nashville. Elliot's in town, and he said, guys, you need to form a band. He says, Polygram is giving $100,000 to bands, and if you could come up with a band name, you'd be the band, and we go in and make an album in the studio, and we just ad lib everything.
Polydor, right? Polydor.
Yeah, so he said, we got to come up with a name. Well, we couldn't come up with a name, okay? But he managed to make a deal with Polygram, Polydor, somebody, and there was some money involved. I think we got a $80,000 budget or something. And so we're all going to split the $80,000. We're going to make the record in 5 days. And Wayne says we can do it out of my studio, which really wasn't much of a studio, but Wayne did a good job on it, you know. He basically engineered it and played very little on it. But we get out there and what are we going to play? And so they said, well, I don't know. And Briggs said, well, let's do Lady Madonna. Because we were on a Michael Nesmith session.
Totally, dude.
He would come down and do his monkey tracks with us. Okay.
Wow.
And
wow.
And so we were on, and he calls in. He's coming late because he's working on a lyric. And the Beatles had just released Lady Madonna, and David starts playing the piano part. And I start playing McCartney's great bass line. Okay. Well, the whole band fell in, and we got Weldon Myrick, a steel player, and Bobby Thompson, the greatest banjo player.
Oh my!
He was there, because Nesmith would bring in these country guys and mix them into rock guys, right? And so we did this burning track of
dude, this
Lady
is
Madonna.
Burning, yeah.
And Felton Jarvis went nuts over it. He said, "This is new music. This is." He didn't use the word fusion because I don't think it was a word then.
Dude, I hate that term fusion, but it's just like it's burning. It's absolutely on fire. That entire session.
But anyway, Mazer was the guy who put it all together. So we go out there to Wayne Moss's studio, and we're doing I think we did an Otis Redding song. I don't know what we did. And we, somebody's going to, they'd say, well, do you know this song? They'd play it, and we'd sketch it out, and then we'd all play it. And the band's great. Oh, Kenny Buttrick, what a drummer. God, Kenny Buttrick.
Dude, it's just like a woman, Classical Gas, Mason Williams, Lil Maggie, Why Ask Why, Get Back, Crazy Arms, Ruby, Lady Madonna, Nashville 9-New York 1, Hey Jude, I've Been Loving You, and Southern Comfort.
Yeah. Well, we knocked that out in about 3-4 days. And then, Mazer says, listen, I've hired the greatest photographer in New York, Bob Cato. Bob Cato took the pictures of Dylan. Right?
Yeah, totally.
They said, Bob Cato is coming in this weekend. He's going to shoot the cover. We'll go up to Center Hill Lake where we all had boats. Well, I didn't have a boat then, but they did. Later, I get a boat up there.
I love it, dude. The lake, man. Saturdays at the lake.
Oh, and the lake up there, it's a mountainous area, and they dammed up a little river. And when it filled up, the middle of the channel of the lake is 180 feet deep. Okay. So I had an old Kris craft I kept up there, day cruiser. But anyway, so we go up there, and so Bob Cato says, so he's shooting pictures of us all around, okay? And he's leaving the next morning. He goes, now look, you got to give me a name for the band. So we had a meeting.
You still hadn't come up with the name, right? So you cut the tracks, no name yet.
Well, yeah. Well, so we're up there at the lake, and by the end of the evening, we're all drunk, and there's no name, and I know he's got an early flight. Well, he leaves the next morning to drive back to Nashville. We get a phone call. Well, he called Mazer, I think, and he said, "Tell those assholes." He said that he says, "I have a name for the band, and they have no choice but take it or leave it." He said, "I'm at the Nashville airport. I'm looking at the phone book, and it says area code 615."
That's it.
Bob Cato named the band.
That just.
Can you believe that?
Norbert, we're just having such a ball. Can we do set 2 like next week? I just there's just so much more to get to.
Oh yeah, sure.
I just you know what it is. There's one final cat in this session that I wanted to ask you about because I didn't realize you guys did at least a couple of albums. I've seen like Tim Drummond on some of this guy's albums, but I really I feel like he gets lost in the mix a little bit. Is this guy Lonnie Mack?
Yeah, Lonnie was great.
The first time knowing this whole conversation, sort of flying by the seat of your pants, like when did you start doing string arrangements? It seems like that was one of the first ones you might have done it on. I could be wrong.
Well, let's see. That's at Quad, though, isn't it?
Yeah, 71, the Hills of Indiana. And you're like, the string work on that is, I just wanted to know, like, ultimately, like, when you, like, sort of the Stevens pep talk, but that had more to do with reading. When did you start to get into the strings?
Well, in the beginning at Fame Studios, one day Rick Hall asked David and I if we would learn to write strings so we wouldn't have to hire a natural arranger.
Just learn that, yeah.
And also, we thought it'd be great to write horn parts for Memphis Horns. That's before we had a Muscle Shoals horn section.
I know.
And so I went down to McCorkle's piano store here in Florence, Alabama. And I said, do you have any books on orchestration arranging? And the guy says, I think we've got one.
It's amazing he even had one. That's amazing.
Yeah. Now this is a college town, okay? Mm-hmm. If I'd gone to the college bookstore, see, I didn't think about that. So he comes back and he's got that. And I said, do you have a bass method book? Oh, I got Bob Haggert's bass method. Give me a copy of that.
I love it.
Now, Bob Haggart played for Perry Como in his TV show in New York. Great bassist, right?
Unbelievable bass player.
So I started to learn about positions on the bass. I was playing acoustic bass with my own made-up way of doing it, and which was sort of okay. But the orchestration arrangement book was by a guy named Russ Garcia.
Yes.
And I think he was a 40s kind of a Hollywood guy.
Absolutely. A heavy kind of like, I feel like I've seen him on jazz albums and stuff.
Probably. Yeah. Listen, his book was so simplistic that I could read about how to write for saxophones and understand it.
See, that is the level, that's genius, when you can put something complex into understandable terminology for someone like yourself, who's obviously...
So Briggs and I both had a cursory knowledge of how to write for string. And we got to Nashville and we got to do more of it. I arranged stuff for Chet Atkins and various people, okay? And David became an excellent string arranger, and I would hire him to write charts for my productions later on, But I'm playing for Henry Mancini, right?
Right.
And I had studied all the Peter Gunn stuff because he wrote all those bass parts. Every note played on those records, Mancini wrote. And so when I meet him, we come in to do the sessions. I was kind of staying away from it because he was such a god when I'd look at him, And after about the second song, I said something about, Henry, I really love the way you write for piano parts, because he used that great jazz guy. What's his name?
I should know this too.
He was the guy who taught Diana Krall how to play jazz.
Was it Pete Jolly? No,
no, he was an L.A. jazzer guy, but he could sight read anything. And Henry said, well, do you write charts? And I said, well, I'll write a few things here and there. And Henry said, well, where did you go to school?
Yeah.
I said, well, Henry, I really didn't go to school. I said, I grew up in this little town in Muscle Shoals, and we started having some success, and I needed to learn to write for horns and strings. And I said, you probably never heard of this guy, but there was one book at McCorkle's Piano Company. I said, did you ever hear of a guy named Russ Garcia? Henry said, did you read that book? I said, yes. He said, I read that book too. Best book ever written on orchestration and arranging.
I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better. You could not. I just want to. I just want to ask you, because this is so. This is actually like. This is going to be a whole. We're going to devote an entire session to this topic. But you said something. I just sort of made up. There was no. Here's the issue I have today, Norbert. And I just want you to talk about your own experience. Is just the idea that you played the bass. There was no right way or wrong way. You came up at a time when there was an opportunity for you to actually develop your own style, obviously within reason, especially in the studio. But if you look at it's just funny that Mancini asked you where you went to school in 1971, because to me there was no. I mean, you weren't a jazzer, but I mean, none of these cats they were all learning on the bandstand. There was no codification. The language of music had not been codified. And I just wonder, looking back on it, the opportunity for you to kind of create your own way of playing. I mean, no one's going to say you were an avant-garde, arco, free jazz bass player, but the point is, you weren't boxed in. I mean, can you talk maybe in hindsight about how liberating it was? Today, you go to the academy, you go into debt, a couple $100,000. There's no guarantee of a gig. Ultimately, you might wind up coming out sounding like your professor because you're learning to read the music before you're learning to hear the music. As a result, at least in jazz, I can't tell who anybody is anymore. There's just a homogenization of sound. That was not the case. I can tell Kenny Buttrey from Jim Keltner, from Carl Himmel. Everyone had their own individual sound. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about, looking back on it, or even in the moment, if you and Briggs and if you guys realized you just were like kids in a candy store, because there really weren't these rules on how to play an instrument.
That's exactly true. And people were breaking all the rules when they were doing things.
Exactly. And it was totally okay.
I mentioned earlier, I think Briggs and I were so close in those days. We were like brothers. One night, we finished our third session at 9:00, and David said, before we go home, let's go down and have one drink at the Black Poodle. That's down in Printer's Alley.
I love
Black
it.
Poodle was
Yes.
It was a music club. As a matter of fact, Chet played there a couple of times a month, and Hank Garland, who played great jazz.
Oh my, Hank! See, now did that.
And Boots Randolph was there.
Dude, Boots could play his ass off. Boots was a great jazz.
Boots could play, okay.
Hard.
And a young Henry Strelecki, a bassist who'd come up from Birmingham, played great jazz with those guys. Whoa. And he was a few years my senior, right? So Dave and I go down there, and it looks like the band is a band called the Almond Joys.
Oh, here we go.
Well, let me tell you something. We were a little disappointed because we were hoping to have a quiet drink at the bar, and now some fucking band is going to play,
just slamming it.
And so Almond Joy is up there making all this noise, and they call up a young private who's going to play guitar on something from Fort Campbell.
Hendrix.
It was Jimi Hendrix.
Oh my God, dude.
And we were looking at him like, I wish the hell he'd shut up so we could talk. We're trying to figure something out. And he's up there and he's biting the strings with his teeth and stuff.
So he was in full Hendrix mode, because I think Himmel or somebody told me that they saw him it was a different style of playing. It was when he was with forget the original band he was with, sort of a doo-wop group. But
he was in his uniform that night, okay.
And he was biting the strings.
Well, he was doing some tricks. We just thought he was fucking crazy. We got out of it.
So insane. Dude, that's yeah. But so to me, I just feel like that's the most. I mean, that was the other question. In your what is remarkable to me, and I'm talking pre pre-1980s, just in general, did you ever, so many of the hits that you made, in some ways, a lot of times, some acts, if they had a big enough budget, would say, I want those cats to go on tour with me. Did you tour in your entire life, or were you strictly in the studio?
No, as a matter of fact, the older players said this to us. They said, once you get in to be a first call player, if you're top 5 bass, drums, keyboards,
You don't leave.
don't go on tour.
Okay, you nailed it. Yeah.
And here's why.
Yeah.
There's in downtown Nashville, there's 20 great guys who can't get a break. And if you're gone and one of them comes in and cuts you, you won't get back in. But the other thing was, I didn't want to tour. I love the fact that every day, my wife kept my book, my young wife and I, she kept my book. And I said, you write down the studio and whether I'm to bring Fender or acoustic or both. Both I got paid an extra quarter scale on or something. Okay.
So if you played both basses, you got
On one session.
I got it. Yeah.
It was a double.
Yeah, double.
And I said, but do not write the artist's name in. Because if I've got a famous artist at 6 o'clock and I got a 10-1 with a new guy, a 2-5 with a new guy, all I'm thinking about all day is Elvis or Orbison.
Totally.
There's somebody great, And I loved walking in and being surprised. One night I came over to RCA and the parking lot was full. Now, the RCA Studio A was a copy of the one in New York and LA and Chicago and Mexico City and Rome and London. Okay.
My
The RCA engineers figured out if we built the exact same control room, the same monitors, the same gear, Perry Como can cut tracks in New York, come down to Nashville, do some work, and bring his engineer with him. And Mancini can come from California with his California,
I get it. No, it makes sense.
And it was the first thing ever done to standardize monitors and equipment. Okay.
So you showed up, it was packed, the parking lot was packed.
Well, not only that, I'd been drinking.
Always can blur the mind a little bit. Yeah.
I had a 10 that morning, a 2 that afternoon, a 6 to 9 that just went a little late. And I grabbed a cocktail over at Ireland's. Maybe I grabbed 2. and I've got to get through this 10-1 in the morning session. And so I get over there and the parking lot is full.
Jeez.
And I have to bring the acoustic bass. And I don't have my station wagon. I've got my wife's car. And I put it in over the seats. And it had a curved windshield the cars had back there in this would have been the late 60s.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
And so, oh God, I got 5 minutes to get in there. I go over the passenger side, open the door, grab my bass, and pull it forward, and it hangs on the right curved window and sticks in the headliner. I can't get it out. So, I have to have the Fender bass. So I grab the Fender bass. Oh, I've got a pint there. I'm going to have one more drink before I go in, right? I sit down on the curb, and the curb is not very, my knees are above the top of my head.
Sure.
And I'm having a swig when a shadow comes over me. I looked up and it's Grady Martin. He's leader.
Whoa.
And he's the meanest son of a bitch, but he knew he was in trouble. I didn't know it then. He sat down beside me. He said, "What are you drinking?" I said, "Well, I'm having a little." I had a Southern Comfort. That's what Kris got me into. He said, "Give me a swig of that." So he took a swig of it.
Yeah.
He put the lid back on. He goes, "Okay, you sit right here. I'm going to get your bass out." He got up there and got my bass out. And he said, "Now, can you walk into the studio?" Oh, I said, "Great, I'm fine. I'm really fine." He goes, so he kicked the double doors open to the big room. And he had me under his left arm and the bass under his right. It's the entire Nashville Symphony Orchestra. George Beverly Shea.
Oh my, no way.
And we do how great that are. and he drags me and the bass and he sets me over. We had a little uh, lean-to thing. There was an awning over the piano, bass, and drums. Okay. And Grady is tuning my bass. He grabs my bass. He's tuning, and Briggs is going to get coffee. And he hands me the bass. And it's perfectly tuned. He said, "Oh, look, you little son of a bitch." He said, "You blow this session, I'm going to kill you." And I sobered up and I played great.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's immediately, you're just stone cold sober at that point.
Didn't Grady handle that perfectly?
It's just so funny too. Like, it's just the idea that you could actually revel in that spontaneity and the surprise. Although your wife at the time, she knew who the sessions were with. She just didn't tell you. Is that right?
Yes, I said I really don't want to know.
Okay, so I love that. See, I love that ability for magic. That's how magic takes place, and there's no over planning. I mean, Norbert Putnam, we got to do set two, man. I had such a ball, man. This was such a classic hang, man.
Well, I'm getting ready to write my second book. Oh, by the way, go and get a copy of Music Lessons, Volume 1 by Norbert Putnam.
I will.
Get it on Amazon. And so when we do this again, there'll be other things you can ask me about. Meanwhile, I'm starting Volume 2.
Well,
and these are little vignettes of Norbert Putnam walks into the studio, and guess who's standing there?
Well, no, and I think that my goal my hope is that, because I was thinking, I often ask people this, but I hope that some of the anecdotes that you shared today weren't in Volume 1, and that maybe that'll wind up in Volume 2.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we got the cover for the book done before I finished all the stories. And there's a couple of names on the cover, and there's no chapter in there.
Well,
and so we're going to fix that in Volume 2. And it's part of a trilogy. I've outlined Volume 2. And I'm going to spend a little more time in Volume 2 talking about how it was actually the technical part of how some of it was done.
Well, I think that's important. It is definitely a trilogy. Is it like linear in terms of like your career, or does it kind of jump all over the place in terms of going from?
Well, Volume 1 is it begins in Muscle Shoals. And it covers the 5 years we were here in Muscle Shoals. And then the second part of the book is Nashville, where I become one of the top bassists, okay? And the third part of the book, Kristofferson calls me to ask if I can introduce him to Joan Baez. And I do that, okay? And Kris spends time with Joni in California writing songs. She calls me and asked me if I'll lead the band instead of Grady Martin. She wants a more contemporary band. And I asked her if she'll come to Quad Studios. And that's the last part of the book. And what happened when she came to Quad, Kris backs out of producing it and talks her into having me do it. And we do the night they drove Old Dixie down, the third night. And it sells 1 million copies. And so now the third part, record producer. I'm doing Dan Fogelberg. I get Eric Anderson. Eric's Blue River album.
Yeah.
Chosen as one of the top albums of that year by Rolling Stone magazine. And Dan and I go on and have a great career together, you know. And then later on, I meet Jimmy Buffett, and I take him to Florida and invent Margaritaville. And my job as a producer, I thought, was to develop the backing music for these artists. I learned first off, once an artist is signed to a label, you don't go in there and start telling the guy how to sing. He's already got a deal singing just the way he is.
That's right.
You know
yeah.
And if you start to improve him, he's going to get pissed off.
Well, I mean, I got some woodshedding to do, but much love to you, man. Are you still down at Thimbleton? Was that what it's called?
No, the name of the old 1820 house was Thimbleton because the property in downtown Florence, Alabama, there was a he made a suit maker. What would you call him? He was a cobbler, not a cobbler. That's shoes. He made clothing for men and women. Wow. Had a little shack there, and he sells the property to this family who builds the great house, and they name it after him because he was a thimble and thread guy. So they call their house Thimbleton after
Thimbleton. Oh, it's so beautiful.
And the city of Florence, the city of Florence was laid out. By the way, the city of Florence, they bought 5,000 acres on the north side of the river. Andrew Jackson was one of the contributors who developed the property of Florence, Alabama. And they hired a young surveyor from Italy who came from Florence. And his name was Sonderver, something like that. And Mr. Sonderver laid out our city with a beautiful park in the middle of it, with wide thoroughfares. And he also designed, I didn't know this when I bought Thimbleton, he drew the parts of the house, and he was the architect for the house. And it was an Italianate house that around 1860 got a mansard roof added, which made me think it was Second Empire French. Well, anyway, that's another story.
Well, I mean, I just want to be clear, though. If I remember correctly, you said you were moving to Tennessee. Are you selling this Thimbleton house now?
Well, my wife and I, for the last 30 years, have been renovating antebellum Victorian mansions in Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama.
You have to be kidding me. Are you kidding? This is unbelievable, Norbert. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, and this is my favorite occupation, okay?
Wow.
Matter of fact, the house we're in now, I really didn't want to buy this house because it's too modern. It's only 82 years old. Yeah.
No, I get it. I am loving. Norbert, let's just save this. Much love to you, man. Thank you for making my day, man.
All right. Well, we'll figure out another time to get together. Get the book.
I'll get the book, and then we'll let it breathe, and we'll do set 2. All right.
Okay, pal.
All right, man. Be cool, man. I'll send you a copy of this later today.
All right. Bye-bye.
Say bye. All good things in all good time. What doesn't he do? Restorator of Victorian mansions, decorated record producer, and obviously one of the heaviest, thumpiest bass players around in the studio, Norbert Putnam. That caps a great week on the Jake Feinberg Show. We will see you later.